Imagine if Britain was invaded, there'd be people on the streets kicking the Russians out. They'd have a go. It might not work. They might well get killed, but they would certainly try. So it's very weird to watch the Ukrainians invade Russia, and there is no popular kickback.
Now, on this very day, 25 years ago, the Russian parliament officially approved Vladimir Putin as the new prime minister of Russia. A lot has changed, both inside Russia and over the rest of the world since then. But what hasn't changed is Putin's vice-like grip on power in the world's biggest country. Joining me now is the investigative journalist and author of Killer in the Kremlin, the explosive account of Putin's reign of terror. That is John Sweeney. John, good afternoon.
Hello, Rosie.
Putin today, 25 years on, facing humiliation in the West. This isn't what he wanted. This isn't what he accounted for. How do you think he's feeling?
Well, he's had a hell of a run, and a grim one. And I believe that the West, Britain too, has been far too accommodating because we've let Putin get away with murder after murder after murder. And then finally, he took the big decision, February 22, to do the big war against Ukraine, thinking that the Ukrainians would fold in 2 or 3 days, that because they were liberal and democratic with small l and small d, that being gay wasn't a crime, etc., etc., that Ukraine would collapse. And nothing like that's happened at all. Yes, it's been rough. I'm actually in Kyiv at the moment. And it's, there are occasional air raid sirens. We call it Putin's lullaby here. And they're scary. And an awful lot of completely innocent men, women, and children have been killed for no good reason. But now, right now, Ukrainians have invaded a whole, quite a bite now out of Russia. And there are 3 weird things going on. The first of which is that Russian logistics are hopeless. I mean, they have not been able to get any kind of armored force to kind of kick the Ukrainian army out of the occupied state, province Kursk at all. Secondly, there has been no, you invade Britain. If Russia was to invade even the worst bits of South London, there'd be trouble. I mean, ordinary people would have a real go at them. That's not happening at all. That's very strange. And the third thing is that Putin has failed, I think, hopeless failure to rally his people in the defense of Russia. So all of those things cast, Putin's legacy in dark shadow.
But is that seen by those closest around him? Whether he's prime minister or president and he flip-flops between the two, those closest to him, can they challenge him? Do they dare to?
Now, that's a good question. So the problem, I mean, imagine if Britain was invaded, there'd be people on the streets kicking the Russians out. They'd have a go. It might not work. They might well get killed, but they would certainly try. So it's very weird to watch the Ukrainians invade Russia, and there is no popular kickback. But that is the question. And it's a good one, Rosie. The people around him. The problem is that he's got a bubble, a bit like the FIFA bubble, or gangsters, or cults, or even the far right you were talking about just now. And they all talk to each other. And essentially, everybody in Vladimir Putin's circle shares his kind of weird myopia of a 1970s KGB secret policeman who thinks that the Soviet Union was the fall of the Soviet Union was the greatest geostrategic catastrophe of the 20th century. I mean, that's nonsense. First World War, Second World War, the Holocaust. It's just nonsense. But the people around him are believe in what he believes in. They drink the same Kool-Aid, as the Americans say. However, I feel more optimistic now than I've done it in a long time, for maybe the last, certainly for a year, that Putin is now in trouble. And I wonder whether the oligarchs who still have to pay fealty to him, They can no longer park their fancy yachts in the south of France or send their ghastly spawn to Eton or Winchester or whatever. That those people will start thinking, this guy, he really isn't very good. So perhaps there's a moment when the power will start to change. Remember, this is a tyranny, and tyrannies because everybody like us is shot or falls out of a window or drinks the wrong kind of tea. It's very, very difficult to know what's going on. What is the mood like inside the Kremlin?
If
But my
he
best guess would be not good.
if he drank the wrong type of tea, fell out a window, those examples, I think the fear is that he would be replaced by someone just the same. Is that right?
Well, that is an anxiety, keep hold of nurse for fear of something worse. I don't buy that because Putin, I think, is extraordinarily cunning. He brings the mindset of a very, very smart blackmailer, gangster, and secret policeman, and effectively he's got away with a lot. So the American intelligence community is solidly convinced that the Russians helped tip the election towards Trump. Whether they actually did it definitively is something we can argue about, but they certainly tried, and they tried hard. There's a question mark remaining about did dark Russian power help the Brexit vote in Britain? It's certainly true, and we're talking about the far right just now, that there's a whole host of far right people across the Western world who've been helped by the Russians in one way or another. Marine Le Pen in France, Salvini in Italy, Tommy Robinson, of course, has been to Russia, something people forget. So I don't think whoever replaces Putin will be as good at playing the West as Putin has been. But I also think enough is enough. He's caused far too much human misery, and we should get serious about arming and helping our Ukrainian friends properly, and we should get serious about sanctions. So, for example, I believe that we should kick Russia off the international banking system. Now, that would cause the rich people around Putin, the oligarchs, it would cause them to think again about their support for him.
Desperately trying to think of strategies that would hurt and be effective. John, thank you. John Sweeney, the journalist and author of Killer in the Kremlin, on what is today 25 years ago when the Russian parliament officially approved Vladimir Putin as the new Prime Minister of Russia. Well, today, talking of timelines, for 11 days, Ukraine have marched further onwards. I liked how John put it there, taking a bite out of Ukraine. We had a fascinating interview at the beginning of this programme to Tom Ball, who's been speaking to some of the Ukrainians who were told by their command, right now, we invade Russia, and they have done so far so successfully.